Undercover Millionaire finds Waitress hiding to eat. Leftovers, his next move will break your heart. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We have noticed that the channel has been losing traction lately, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It is quick, completely free, and it allows us to continue bringing you more meaningful stories every week. Your support means everything to us. Let's keep this channel growing together. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main story. Have you ever met someone whose smallest act of kindness could completely change your life? Late one winter night in Portland, Oregon, the restaurant lights had already dimmed. The sound of rain tapping against the glass windows mixed with the faint hum of the dishwasher. At the back of the kitchen, a man wearing a gray maintenance jacket pushed a mop slowly across the marble floor. His name was Caleb Ward, a quiet man in his mid-30s with calm eyes and an unassuming posture. To everyone, he was just the night janitor. As he reached the last counter, Caleb noticed something, a faint clatter coming from behind the service door. Curious, he stepped closer and peeked through the small glass window. Inside, sitting alone on an overturned crate, was a young waitress, her head bent low, her shoulders trembling slightly. Maya Torres, 23, still in her work apron, was carefully picking pieces of bread and pasta from a takeout box. The food was cold, leftovers from a table that had left hours ago. She glanced around nervously before taking a small bite, as if every chew carried the risk of being fired. Caleb froze. The image hit him harder than he expected. A girl this young, still working after midnight, hiding to eat what others had thrown away. For a moment, he thought about walking away. He had built his entire life around staying invisible. But then he saw her hands. They were raw from scrubbing dishes and carrying trays all day, and now they shook as she tried to warm them around a paper cup of tap water. He walked into the room, his boots soft against the tile. Maya jumped, nearly spilling the box. "I am sorry," she stammered. "I was just cleaning up." Caleb looked at her for a long second, then reached into the brown paper bag he carried. Inside was a wrapped turkey sandwich, one he had bought earlier, but never ate. He placed it gently on the counter beside her. "You should have this," he said quietly. Maya blinked, confused. "I cannot take that. It is yours." Caleb smiled faintly. Nobody should have to hide to eat. For a few seconds, neither of them moved. The hum of the freezer filled the silence. Then, without another word, Caleb turned and left the kitchen. Maya stared at the sandwich. It was still warm, wrapped neatly in wax paper. She whispered to herself, "Why would he do that?" Outside, the rain kept falling. Caleb stepped into the empty alley, lifting his collar against the cold wind. In his pocket, his phone buzzed a message from his assistant waiting at the penthouse. "Tomorrow's board meeting is confirmed, Mr. Ward. Do you want the car at 9? He read the message once, then locked the screen without replying. The truth was, nobody at the restaurant knew that the quiet janitor cleaning their floors was actually Caleb Ward, founder of the Ward Hospitality Group, one of the most successful restaurant chains on the West Coast. He had built an empire of luxury dining, but tonight, watching a young woman hide in the shadows to eat what others left behind, something inside him shifted. He glanced back through the rain-streaked window, where Maya was still sitting under the dim light, holding that small sandwich like it was something sacred. Caleb whispered under his breath, "People do not need perfection. They just need a full meal." And in that quiet, rain-soaked moment, the test he never meant to start had already begun. The next morning, the city woke under a pale winter sun. Clouds still hung low over Portland, and the streets glistened with leftover rain. Inside the same restaurant, Maya Torres hurried through the side door, her breath visible in the cold air. Her apron was neatly folded, her hair pulled back, but her eyes still carried the exhaustion of someone who had slept too little and worried too much. She had spent half the night thinking about that man, the janitor who had left her a warm sandwich without a single question. Nobody had ever done that for her before. At first, she thought maybe he pitied her, but the way he looked at her, steady and kind, it did not feel like pity. It felt like respect. When Maya walked into the locker room, something caught her eye. On top of her small metal shelf lay a folded napkin. In the center, written in simple handwriting, were the words, "You." deserve a full meal. Her heart skipped. She looked around, but the others were already rushing to the dining hall. No one was watching her. She touched the napkin as if it might disappear, then carefully folded it into her pocket. That day, business was slow. A few late-morning customers lingered over coffee while Maya polished glasses at the bar. Every time the kitchen door swung open, she half expected to see the quiet janitor again. But Caleb did not show up. At noon, she stepped outside for a breath of cold air. The street smelled faintly of roasted beans from the cafe across the corner. She reached into her coat pocket, feeling the paper again. For reasons she could not explain, the words gave her strength. Across town, Caleb Ward sat in a boardroom of glass and steel, overlooking the gray skyline. A dozen executives were waiting for him to speak, but his mind kept wandering back to the image of that girl sitting in the dim kitchen. The memory felt heavier than the reports. On the table, "Mr. Ward," one of the directors asked, "are we moving forward with the new hiring cuts?" Caleb's fingers tightened around his pen. He looked up slowly, his expression unreadable. "No," he said. "We are going to revise the plan. Every restaurant under our brand will raise staff meals to include full coverage. No more leftovers." The room went silent. A few managers exchanged confused glances, but no one argued. Caleb simply added, "If we can feed strangers in luxury, we can feed our own with dignity." After the meeting, he stood by the window, watching raindrops slide down the glass. The city looked softer from up here, but also more distant. He thought about the people behind the counters, the dishwashers, the servers, the janitors, people who carried his company's name yet barely earned enough to live. For the first time in years, he wondered what all his success had really meant. That evening, Caleb returned to the restaurant, not in his usual car or suit, but again in the gray maintenance jacket. He moved quietly through the kitchen, checking light fixtures and pretending to read a clipboard. Then he saw her Maya, stacking plates, humming under her breath. "Hey," he said softly. She looked up, startled, then smiled nervously. "You came back." "I had to make sure everything was still working," he said, lifting the clipboard. Her eyes flickered to the bag in his hand. "You brought dinner again." He hesitated, then nodded. "You work late. It is only fair someone brings you something fresh." For a moment, Maya did not know what to say. "Why are you being so kind to me?" she whispered. Caleb met her gaze. "Because someone once told me the smallest kindness can save a person's day." The room grew quiet. The smell of warm bread filled the air as she unwrapped the meal he brought. They sat at the back table, eating slowly, talking about everything except who they really were. When Maya laughed, it echoed softly through the kitchen, and for the first time in a long while, Caleb felt something he had almost forgotten: peace. Neither of them knew that this fragile moment would soon lead to a truth that could break them both, or heal them forever. The following days passed in a rhythm that felt strangely comforting. Every night, after the last customer left and the kitchen lights dimmed, Caleb stayed behind under the disguise of a janitor. Maya would finish her closing tasks, and somehow, they always found themselves in the same quiet corner sharing a simple meal. They talked about everything but money or status. Caleb asked about her mother, and Maya told him about the hospital bills, the second job she was trying to find, and how she used to dream of becoming a chef before life turned into a struggle to survive. She spoke with a shy laugh, always ending her sentences with hope, as if refusing to let despair take the last word. Caleb listened. Every word she said settled inside him like truth he had forgotten. He had spent years in boardrooms, surrounded by men who spoke in profits and percentages. But here, in the quiet kitchen, a girl with tired eyes reminded him of why he had started his first restaurant, because food was supposed to connect people, not separate them. One evening, as snow started to fall outside, Maya arrived with a small brown lunchbox. "You always bring food for me," she said. "Tonight, it is my turn." She opened the box to reveal a homemade stew. It was simple, unevenly seasoned, but filled with warmth. Caleb took one bite and smiled. "This tastes like home," he said. Maya grinned proudly. "Then maybe one day I can cook for real guests, not just for myself in secret." "You already do," he replied. For a moment, she looked at him curiously, as if trying to understand what he meant. He quickly changed the topic, asking about her favorite spices, and she laughed, forgetting to question further. That night, when Maya went to the locker room, she found another note tucked inside her apron pocket. It read, "Keep cooking. The world needs more hands like yours." She smiled, her heart swelling with something she had not felt in months. Encouragement. She did not know who kept leaving those notes, but she began to keep them all in a small envelope at home, as if collecting tiny seeds of hope. Across town, Caleb stood alone in his penthouse kitchen. The marble counters gleamed under the city lights, but the space felt empty. He poured himself a cup of coffee and stared out at the skyline. Down there, people like Maya worked long hours just to make rent, while he sat surrounded by silence and success. He picked up his phone and opened the internal staff report. His restaurant chain employed over 3,000 workers. Reading through the numbers, he realized how disconnected he had become from their lives. He closed the report and whispered to himself, "I built something beautiful, but I forgot who it was for." The next morning, he made a decision. He arranged for an unannounced inspection at the same restaurant, but this time as himself. He wanted to see the place through her eyes. That evening, when the staff gathered nervously, the air felt heavy with tension. The general manager rushed to greet him, unaware that the quiet janitor and the man in the tailored suit were the same person. Caleb walked slowly through the dining hall, observing every detail. When he reached the kitchen, he saw Maya standing near the sink, frozen in disbelief. Her eyes widened, recognition dawning in an instant. She whispered, You are not the janitor." Caleb's heart pounded. The truth was out sooner than he had planned. "Maya," he began, his voice calm but heavy, "I never meant to deceive you. I just needed to see what my world looked like when no one was watching." Her face turned pale. "So, I was just part of your experiment?" "No," he said quickly. "You were the reminder of what really matters." But the words sounded weak against the echo of her hurt. She shook her head, tears welling up, and stepped back. "I trusted you," she whispered, "and you were testing me the whole time." Before he could answer, she turned and walked out into the falling snow, leaving him standing in the glow of the kitchen lights, surrounded by everything money could buy and everything it could never fix. The snow kept falling through the night, turning Portland's streets into rivers of white silence. Caleb stood at the restaurant's entrance long after Maya had gone. The sound of her voice, trembling with disappointment, echoed in his mind. For the first time in years, he felt powerless. He could buy anything, fix anything, but he could not buy back her trust. The next morning, the newspaper on his desk remained unread. Meetings were canceled, calls unanswered. He sat alone in his office, staring at the window fogged with condensation. His assistant, a man named George, knocked gently. "Sir, are we proceeding with the winter charity event tonight?" Caleb hesitated. The event was a formal gala for the Ward Foundation, an annual celebration of donations and corporate sponsors. Every year it was flawless music, champagne, and shallow congratulations. But this time the thought of it made him feel sick. "Yes," he said quietly, "we are going ahead." That evening, the ballroom glowed with gold light and polished marble. Guests in tailored suits raised glasses while photographers captured every smile. Caleb moved through the crowd with practiced composure, but his mind was elsewhere on a girl who had walked into the snow with tears in her eyes. Meanwhile, Maya sat on the edge of her bed in her small apartment. The heater rattled faintly, barely keeping the cold away. She held the folded notes he had left her, the ones that once felt like miracles. Now, they burned in her, hand-like lies. "Keep cooking. The world needs more hands like yours." She whispered the words aloud, almost laughing through her tears. "And you needed a story for your next press release." Her phone buzzed with a message from her coworker. "Turn on Channel 7. The Ward Foundation Gala is on." Against her better judgment, she reached for the remote. On screen, she saw him, Caleb Ward, standing at the podium, speaking into a sea of applause. He looked every bit the man she thought he was not. Confident, composed, powerful. The banner behind him read, "Feeding Hope Haingin Lea Haimui. Caleb's voice carried through the speakers. "When I built these restaurants, I believed success meant expansion, but I was wrong. True success means dignity for every person who serves, cooks, and cleans behind those walls." He paused, his gaze distant. "Recently, someone reminded me what a full meal truly means. Not food, but compassion. Maya froze. The room around her seemed to fade. His words did not sound like a speech for investors. They sounded like an apology spoken in public. Back at the gala, the audience rose in applause. But Caleb did not smile. He stepped away from the podium and disappeared behind the curtains. The applause meant nothing. He did not know if the one person who needed to hear it was even listening. Later that night, after the crowd had left, Caleb returned to his office at the foundation headquarters. The city outside shimmered with lights reflecting off the snow. He sat at his desk and began to write a letter. Maya, he wrote, I cannot ask you to forgive me. What I did was wrong. I wanted to understand the people I serve, but I ended up hurting the only one who showed me what kindness really looks like. I am starting a program called the Full Meal Project, dedicated to feeding and training those who have been overlooked. It will begin in the same kitchen where we met. If you ever decide to come back, the door will always be open. He folded the letter carefully and sealed it inside an envelope marked only with her name. The next morning, before sunrise, he drove to the restaurant and slipped it under the door. Then he stood there for a moment, the cold biting through his coat. Please find your way back, he whispered before walking away. Across the city, as the sun began to rise, Maya arrived for her early shift at a temporary job washing dishes at a smaller cafe. When she bent down to tie her apron, something in her pocket brushed her hand, the napkin that said, "You deserve a full meal." She stared at it for a long time, feeling the quiet ache in her chest soften. Maybe she was not ready to forgive him yet, but somewhere deep inside, she hoped his words were true, because if they were, then maybe kindness could still come full circle. Winter slowly gave way to early spring. The snow melted from Portland's rooftops, leaving the streets damp but alive again. Weeks had passed since the night of the gala. Maya had tried to move on, but no matter how many shifts she worked or how many times she told herself she did not care, Caleb's words kept echoing in her mind. True success means dignity for every person who serves. She found herself replaying the moment she saw him on television, the honesty in his eyes when he spoke about compassion. There had been no pride, no arrogance, just remorse. And somehow, that sincerity had unsettled her more than his lie ever did. One morning, after finishing a double shift at the cafe, Maya noticed an announcement pinned near the entrance. The paper was clean and bold, marked with the familiar Ward Foundation logo. It read, "Now hiring. Community cooks for the Full Meal Project, a new kitchen built to serve the public. Training provided. Experience welcome. Hearts required." She stood there, reading the words over and over. Her heart raced. It was the name from his letter, the Full Meal Project. For a long minute, she simply stared at the sign, torn between resentment and curiosity. Then, as if something deep inside made the decision for her, she took one of the flyers and slipped it into her bag. The following Monday, she arrived at the address printed on the flyer, a modest red brick building on the city's east side. The sign over the door was simple: Full Meal Kitchen, a Ward Foundation initiative. Through the window, she could see stainless steel counters, open shelves, and a handful of volunteers preparing food. The place did not look like one of his luxury restaurants. It looked real, warm, and human. When she stepped inside, a woman in an apron greeted her with a kind smile. "You must be Maya. Mr. Ward said you might come." Maya froze. "He told you I would?" The woman nodded. He said, "If she walks through that door, give her a job before she even asks." For a moment, Maya could not speak. The woman handed her a volunteer badge and guided her toward the kitchen. "We cook for families, students, anyone who needs a meal. No judgment, no questions. Just food." As the morning went on, Maya found herself slipping into a familiar rhythm, chopping vegetables, stirring soup, plating dishes. The smells of garlic and bread filled the air, and for the first time in a long while, she felt at peace. People came in one by one, some shy, some smiling, all grateful. When a little boy whispered, "Thank you," her heart clenched in the best way possible. At noon, while she was cleaning the counter, she heard a quiet voice behind her. "Still cooking?" She turned sharply. Caleb stood near the doorway, dressed simply in a gray sweater and jeans. He looked different, less like a CEO, more like a man who had learned to breathe again. "I promised I would not interfere," he said softly. "I just wanted to see the place running." Maya hesitated. There were 1,000 things she wanted to say, yet none seemed right. Finally, she managed, "It is beautiful here. People smile when they eat. You did that." He shook his head. "You did that. I just built the walls." They stood in silence for a long moment. Then Caleb said, "There is something for you in the office." She followed him into a small room at the back. On the wall hung a framed piece of paper, the napkin with the words, "You deserve a full meal." Beneath it was a brass plaque engraved with her name, in honor of Maya Torres, whose kindness started it all. Maya's eyes filled with tears. "You kept it?" "I kept everything," he replied. "Because that night, you reminded me who I wanted to be." She turned toward him, her voice breaking slightly. "You did hurt me, Caleb, but maybe you were meant to." He looked at her, uncertain. "Do you mean that?" "I mean," she said, "sometimes the only way to heal is to break first." He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that carried both apology and hope. "Then let me start making it right." Maya nodded, and for the first time since that rainy night in the kitchen, she let herself believe that forgiveness could be real. Outside, the sky was clearing. Sunlight streamed through the window, warm and golden, touching the framed napkin on the wall. And for both of them, it felt like the beginning of something whole. The days at the full meal kitchen began to unfold like quiet miracles. Maya arrived early each morning, long before the doors opened, to brew the first pot of coffee and check the ovens. The smell of baked bread mixed with sunlight from the east windows, and the place started to feel less like a workplace and more like home. People from every corner of the city came to eat, and no one asked who could pay or who could not. Caleb visited often, but always stayed in the background. He wore simple clothes and rolled up his sleeves to help serve food. The volunteers adored him, though few of them realized who he really was. He moved quietly, washing dishes, organizing supplies, and smiling each time Maya gave directions. She had grown into the role naturally, with gentle authority and a warmth that filled the entire room. One afternoon, the kitchen buzzed louder than usual. The first community event was happening, a free lunch for local workers and families. Maya oversaw the tables while Caleb managed deliveries. At one point, she turned to see him helping a group of teenagers carry trays of soup. He laughed when one of them accidentally spilled, and the sound made her pause. It was the first time she had heard him truly laugh. Later, when the rush ended, they sat on the back steps of the building, sharing a quiet meal like they used to. The sun dipped low behind the warehouses, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Maya handed him a piece of bread. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. "The luxury, the suits, the high life?" Caleb smiled faintly. "I used to think that was what made me alive, but lately I feel more human washing dishes than signing contracts." She looked at him, her voice soft. "Then maybe you finally built something real." He nodded. "Because of you." There was a silence between them, not awkward, but full of something unspoken. Then Maya said, "You know, when I first met you, I thought you pitied me." "I never did," he replied quickly. "I admired you. You worked harder than anyone I had ever seen, and you still managed to be kind." Her eyes glistened. Kindness was all I had left. Caleb reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, worn envelope. "I kept this from the first night we met," he said, opening it carefully. Inside was the faded note that once read, "You deserve a full meal." Maya smiled through the tears forming in her eyes. "You really did keep everything." He met her gaze. Every word, every moment. The air around them grew still. For a brief second, she could see the man behind the title, the one who had made mistakes, but was trying to be better. Caleb's hand brushed against hers, not deliberate, but enough for both of them to feel the truth rising between them. Before either could speak, a volunteer called from inside. "Maya, we need more plates." She stood quickly, wiping her eyes. "Duty calls," she said with a small laugh. Caleb watched her disappear into the kitchen. He exhaled slowly, realizing that the peace he had been searching for his entire life was not in wealth or redemption. It was in her. That night, long after everyone had gone home, Caleb stayed behind to turn off the lights. The empty hall echoed softly, but it did not feel lonely. On the wall, the framed napkin caught the last light of the exit sign. The words seemed to whisper back at him, "You deserve a full meal." He smiled quietly and whispered, "So do you, Maya." Outside, the night air was cool and calm. For the first time, he did not rush toward his car or his schedule. He simply walked home under the streetlights, feeling whole in a way he never had before. The story was far from over. Something deeper was still waiting, something that would test both forgiveness and love. The deepest secrets are about to change everything. Subscribe now to catch the dramatic twist that is coming in the next chapter. Spring turned into summer, and the full meal kitchen grew busier than ever. Donations increased, local newspapers wrote about the project, and people from all over the city came to volunteer. Maya became the heart of it all. Her laughter filled the rooms, her recipes drew crowds, and her quiet leadership gave the place a rhythm that felt unshakable. But not everyone saw it that way. Within the Ward Foundation's upper board, a few investors began to question Caleb's decisions. They argued that the new program was not profitable and too personal. One afternoon, while Caleb reviewed reports in his office, George, his assistant, stepped in with a tense look. "Sir, the board has called for an emergency meeting. They believe your involvement with the kitchen is a distraction." Caleb's expression hardened. "A distraction from what, George? From being decent? They are worried about the company's image," George said quietly. "They have also learned that Miss Torres is now managing the project. Some think it looks emotional." Caleb stood, his voice steady but cold. "It is emotional, because this company finally has a soul." The meeting that followed was heated. Several board members demanded that the foundation cut funding for the kitchen and redirect it toward corporate sponsorships. Caleb listened in silence until one of them said, "If you continue this charity obsession, we will vote to remove you as CEO." He leaned forward, his calm voice silencing the room. "Do what you need to. But if you take food away from people who need it, then you will no longer be part of my company." The board members exchanged uneasy glances. None of them dared to speak again. Caleb walked out without waiting for the vote. That evening, Maya found him in the kitchen storage room, sleeves rolled up, stacking supplies. She immediately sensed something was wrong. "What happened?" she asked. He smiled faintly, though there was exhaustion in his eyes. "Just a little disagreement at work. Nothing to worry about." She crossed her arms, studying him. "You are lying. You only smile like that when you are hiding something." Caleb sighed. "They think this place is bad for business. They threaten to take it away." Her heart sank. "They cannot. It belongs to the people." He nodded. "That is what I told them." For a moment, they stood in silence, surrounded by boxes of donated goods. Then Maya said softly, "You could lose everything." Caleb looked at her, his voice calm. "If losing everything means keeping what matters, then it is worth it." Her eyes filled with tears, but she smiled. "You are not the man I met in that kitchen anymore." He shook his head. "Maybe I am finally becoming him." Outside, thunder rolled over the city, the first storm of the summer. Inside, the air between them felt charged with something stronger than fear-faith. Neither of them knew that the storm outside was nothing compared to what was coming next. The storm that night marked more than rain. By morning, headlines began to spread across social media and business news. Someone inside the Ward Foundation had leaked a story, claiming that Caleb Ward had been misusing company funds for a personal relationship with a former waitress. The article included a blurred photo of him and Maya serving food together at the full meal kitchen. The comments were cruel, twisting kindness into scandal. At the foundation headquarters, reporters gathered outside. George entered Caleb's office, holding a tablet, his expression grave. "It has gone viral, sir. The board is demanding a press statement within the hour." Caleb took the tablet, scanning the false headlines. His jaw tightened. "Who leaked it?" "They are not saying, but it came from internal access," George replied. "They want you to step down until the matter is investigated." Caleb's voice stayed calm, but his hands trembled slightly. "I will not abandon the truth because it makes them uncomfortable." Across town, Maya found out from a customer who showed her the article on a phone. Her chest tightened as she read the lies. The idea that people thought she was using him hurt more than anything. She immediately called him, but it went straight to voicemail. Later that afternoon, Caleb appeared at the kitchen. His eyes were tired, his suit unbuttoned, rain still clinging to his hair. The volunteers stopped what they were doing as he walked toward her. Maya, he said quietly, I am sorry you got dragged into this. She shook her head. Do not apologize. None of this was your fault. But what will happen now? The board wants me out, he admitted. They think shutting this place down will save the company's reputation. Her eyes widened in disbelief. After everything this kitchen has done? After all the lives it helped? He nodded slowly. That is why I cannot let them take it. Without another word, he walked to the front of the dining hall, where volunteers and guests had gathered, confused by the cameras outside. Caleb raised his voice just enough for everyone to hear. This kitchen was built with love, not profit, he said. If the world wants to turn compassion into scandal, let them. I will not hide what is right. The crowd applauded, some even standing. Maya watched him, her heart swelling with pride and fear at the same time. She knew this moment could destroy everything he had built, but it could also set him free. That evening, as the sun set behind the storm clouds, Caleb signed a single sheet of paper in his office, his resignation. The decision was his alone. When Maya found out, she rushed to see him. He was standing in the empty foundation hall, looking out over the city lights. You gave it all up, she said softly. He turned to her, his eyes gentle. No, Maya, I finally gave something real. For the first time, she stepped closer and took his hand. Then let us build something together. And as they stood there in the fading light, the world outside continued to argue and speculate. But inside that quiet moment, the truth was simple. He had lost a title but gained something far greater. Purpose and the beginning of love. A full year passed after Caleb's resignation. The Ward Foundation no longer made headlines, but the full meal kitchen had become a quiet revolution across the city. What started as one humble space had turned into several community kitchens, all inspired by the same message written on a single napkin: you deserve a full meal. Maya now directed the program full-time. Her confidence had grown, her smile brighter than ever. She was no longer the girl hiding to eat leftovers. She was the woman who fed hundreds each week, leading with compassion rather than fear. People admired her, not for her past, but for the light she carried forward. Caleb, meanwhile, chose a life far simpler than before. He sold his penthouse, moved into a modest apartment near the river, and spent most of his days helping at the kitchens. He no longer cared for boardrooms or power. What mattered was the laughter of volunteers, the smell of fresh bread, and the sight of Maya greeting every guest by name. One afternoon, as sunlight poured through the tall windows, the kitchen celebrated its first anniversary. The air buzzed with music and laughter. Volunteers prepared trays of food while visitors lined up outside. Maya stood at the counter arranging flowers when Caleb approached her, holding a small box in his hand. I have been waiting for the right moment, he said softly. She turned to him, curious. For what? He opened the box. Inside was a simple silver ring, delicate but beautiful. For this, he said, for us, for the moment I finally ask you what I should have asked long ago. Her breath caught. The room seemed to fall silent. Caleb, she whispered. He smiled gently. You showed me that love is not earned by wealth or power, but by the courage to be real. So I am asking, not as a millionaire, but as a man, will you marry me? Tears filled her eyes. Around them, the kitchen continued to hum with life, the clatter of plates, the soft music, the aroma of bread. It felt perfect. Yes, she said simply. 1,000 times, yes. The room erupted in cheers. Volunteers clapped, and someone shouted, about time. Caleb laughed, slipping the ring onto her finger. For a moment, he looked at the framed napkin on the wall, the one that had started it all. Later, as evening settled, they stepped outside together. The city lights shimmered across the river, reflections dancing like stars. Maya leaned against him and said, Do you ever miss who you used to be? He shook his head. No, because that man was searching for meaning, and I finally found mine. They stood in the glow of streetlights, holding hands, knowing their journey had come full circle from deception to truth, from hunger to fulfillment, from loneliness to love. Their story was not about money or status. It was about kindness, redemption, and the courage to start over. Thank you for joining us for this cinematic adventure. If you want more untold or real stories of billionaire love and redemption, please subscribe and choose your next true heart journey on your screen now.